Hey everyone, it's Dr. Trevor. Welcome to Mindset Monday. Really excited to be with you guys today. So today we're going to talk about a topic that I think is really important to our mental fitness. And it's this: building resilience as a mindset. So I think the first thing we have to talk about is, what is resilience and why does it matter? So resilience is simply the ability to bounce back. Right, when we experience setbacks, adversity, failures, challenges, even things that are traumatic or tragic in our lives, resilience is the experience, the quality of being able to bounce back. Like, there's a few qualities to the idea of resilience I think are important for us. First of all, it takes this incredible kind of like grit to it. There's like a resolve that happens in the midst of resilience. And it's this ability to be able to withstand. It's this ability to have commitment, to kind of hold steadfast in the midst of challenges and adversities. We also find with resilience this ability to commit to recovery. Like when we experiencing challenges, when we experience difficulties, again, resilience comes from this place of being able to say, hey, I'm committed to recovery. But I think there's also this other quality about resilience that it includes this ability to be like adaptive and to be flexible. Like when life happens and life hits us in ways that are unexpected, in ways that are difficult for us, it's important that we are able to adapt and adjust and be flexible. All right, so let me just maybe quick tell you a story to kind of see resilience in action. Recently worked with a client, and they had come into the office. They were struggling after a sudden job loss. Like, didn't see it coming, didn't have a plan B. Like, this was the job that they were in. They'd been in it for years. This is kind of all they knew. So they come in to the office. We start in on our work together. And in the midst of kind of processing their emotions and their experience and their thought journey through all of this, start to be able to talk about resilience. Like the same things I just mentioned, like what is it? How does it work? And with that client, and which we're going to do a little bit today, is to be able to say, hey, how do I increase it or how do I grow it? So with this client, their challenge, right, is the sudden job loss. But it's not just the job loss itself. It's the loss of income. It's also the loss of like purpose and direction. It's disorienting to routines they had developed, to habits they had formed about getting up and going to work every day, about interacting with other people, about finding meaning and purpose in the things that they do that matter to them. And so in the midst of that, this client was able to walk with him, even though it was like a massive blow for them. They were able to take a season of unemployment to really reflect about like what really matters to them, reflect about their career goals, their aspirations, their desires. In the midst of that, this particular client decided that they were going to work towards another certification, so they were intent on like being open to developing and learning new skills, and eventually they found a job. And when they found this job, it wasn't just again meeting the need of the job. It wasn't just to be able to get another paycheck or just to be able to pay the bills. But when this client found their next job, they actually were in a stronger place than when they had, just before they had lost the previous job. And as I sat with the client, they were able to reflect back to me, like something had shifted in them, something had changed. And as we discussed, it was the strengthening of resilience, like their ability to sit in the discomfort a little bit longer, right, to withstand it a little more, like their commitment in the midst of it to not just get knocked down, but their strong commitment to get back up. This idea of not just how we start the race, but how we finish the race. Like there was a mental strength. There was, I talked about earlier, a mental fitness that took place with this individual. where they were able to say, hey, when I started this next job, actually much stronger in my mental health and in my mindset, again, than I was in the previous job. What was also incredible for this client, again, as I mentioned, it wasn't just about getting another paycheck, getting another job, being able to pay the bills. It actually helped refine them in their sense of purpose, in their sense of calling. They actually felt better about the new job that they were in because it more aligned with who they are as a person. It more connected with them deep down inside of a place of calling and meaning and purpose. Like this new job, as they were just starting into it, was already for them like in anticipation of a deeper sense of like fulfillment in their lives. And I love that. So that's what we're talking about, this kind of idea of resilience, to be able to bounce back, to withstand, to recover, to be adaptive, to be flexible, and to increase and strengthen this resilience around about getting up and getting going and moving forward. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about not just, as I mentioned, what is resilience, or how do we understand it, or what's an example of it, but I want to spend the rest of our time just talking about strategies to building resilience. So I think the first step we have to do is we have to do some kind of like introspective, some kind of interpersonal assessment. And it's really around this idea of self-awareness, like our ability to understand what stresses us out, how we respond or react to stress. I think that's really important for us, again, just fundamentally to be able to say, okay, so what are those things in my life that are, as challenges happen, as difficulties, unexpected, unplanned difficulties show up in my life, I think there's, again, a need for self-awareness, this kind of self-assessment, be able to say, what's stressing me out? Why is it stressing me out? Like, what's going on inside of me? If we're going to be able to develop strategies or plans to be able to handle those stresses better, then we have to be able to acknowledge what are those things. So here's something we can do as we think about this, strategies for building resilience with self-awareness. So I encourage you to do this. If you're finding yourself in the midst of a difficult challenge, a struggle, an uncertainty, if I just kept going through the list pretty soon, I'm going to maybe get to the point where we all can kind of connect and identify with something's going on in our lives. It's not going as planned. It's not quite what we hoped it is. Maybe we feel like we got knocked down. Maybe like that story I mentioned earlier, there's like this big blow in our lives, like a job loss, or maybe it's something maybe less noticeable to the world around us, but it's still significant to us. Which, maybe it's the lack of connection with somebody that you've been connected with previously or that you desire to be connected with. Maybe it's some kind of challenge around making progress in a certain area and you just feel like you're stuck up against, like you're hitting a wall. Again, whatever it might be. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment each day to reflect on your feelings and reactions to situations. Take a moment every day to reflect on your feelings and reactions to situations. Now, you've probably heard Dr. Mike or I in the past talk about this sequence. It comes from cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's simply this idea. Situations lead to thoughts. Thoughts lead to feelings. Feelings lead to behaviors. Did you catch that? Situations lead to thoughts. Thoughts lead to feelings. Feelings lead to behaviors. So as you're doing this work of self-awareness every day, right, to increase or strengthen resilience in your life, walk through this sequence. Again, every day, just pay attention to it. What are the situations in my life? What are the thoughts that it's producing? What are the feelings that are coming from that? And what's the behaviors in which I'm responding? Okay, next thing I want to talk about is the idea of mindfulness and mindset shifts. Okay, mindfulness and mindset shifts. So First of all, mindfulness. Why mindfulness in this idea of resilience? Because mindfulness helps us remain present and engaged, right? So in those moments I just talked about earlier when I said there's stress, right? Identify areas that create and cause stress for you. Oftentimes when we experience stress, it results in anxiety and worry. It results in some kind of emotional experience. And when that happens, it tends to pull us away from being present. In fact, those emotions that I just mentioned, they tend to actually push us into the future, right? It's like those questions of what if this happens, or what if this happens, or what if this doesn't happen, or what if this doesn't take place, or what if the outcome isn't this, or what if the situation isn't that, right? We tend to live in the future around these what ifs. So what mindfulness does is it brings us back to the present. It recenters us around this idea of, hey, we have to be engaged in the present. Mindfulness also helps us in this great way in noticing our patterns without reacting to them in the heat of the moment. It's actually this great distinction between a response and a reaction. A reaction is when it's emotionally charged. It's this idea of a reaction is when our emotions are in charge of us, rather than a response. A response is more cognitively fueled, which is an ability to be able to say, hey, I'm actually in charge of my emotions right now. Think about that. Do you want to be someone who reacts, like you're just emotionally charged every time a situation comes along? Anytime something ever happens, you just emotionally engage? Well, no, that's not how we want to live. Right? A much better experience if we can live in this place of responsiveness. And as I mentioned, mindfulness helps us stay present. It helps us stay engaged. And ultimately, it helps us for the ability to be able to choose a response over a reaction. All right, so here's what I want to do. I want to just take a moment and actually kind of practice mindfulness. So I want everybody just with me right now. We're just going to take a deep breath. As we do that, like notice the air filling up in your lungs. You're going to breathe in with your nose, and then you're going to exhale slowly through your mouth. As you do that slowly, you're going to notice like the breath, right, releasing from your body. Okay, this is a simple example. I mean, there's lots of ways we can practice mindfulness. It's just a super simple example of choosing to be present, right? Just through that breathing in, right, through our nose. We can feel the air right through our nostrils. We can feel it in our lungs, in our diaphragm. Right, we're present with our body in that moment. When we breathe out, we can feel that air coming out of our mouth, that release again from our diaphragm, from our bodies. Right, just in that moment right there, we're able to be present. So again, if we're gonna build resilience, we have to live in the present. So choose mindfulness. All right, so the next thing is we talk about how to build resilience. I want to talk about building a support system. Like there's great power in having support, having people that like care about you and love you, people in your life who encourage you and support you. You know, it's not often talked about, but it's not just about the people who are just cheerleaders in your life and who just go like, yeah, you got this, you can do it, right? But sometimes support systems include those same people who love us enough, right, to give us feedback when we need it, right, to support us and sometimes to be able to help guide or direct when we get off course a little bit. Yeah, like there's great strength in numbers. And so having a support system around us is really, really important. The goal for them is not for them to fix a problem or to solve something. The goal in that is to support us, right, so that we can do our work in the midst of it. So here's what I want you to do when you think about this and building a support system. I want you to think about like a bullseye. Okay, at the very, very center of that bullseye is you. Think about that. We don't consider this often, but at the very center of our support system is us. Like, I'm at the center of my support system. You are at the center of your support system. And it starts with our ability to be able to say, hey, I'm going to choose to support myself. I'm going to choose to be kind to myself. I'm going to choose to take care of myself. I'm going to choose to set priorities, right, to make sure that I am healthy, make sure that I get rest, make sure that I eat, make sure that I exercise, right, make sure that I spend time with key people in my lives, right? So we're going to start with this center of this bullseye, right? Our ability to be able to start with us at the center of our own support system. Then I want you to think like one ring outside of that. We're going to think of this as like the inner circle. You might have 1 to 3 people in your life who, like, they just know anything and everything about you. They are like your trusted advisors. They are your go-to people. Sometimes I've heard this called, they're the 2 a.m. friend, right? So it's the middle of the night and you can't sleep and you need someone to talk to. Who are you going to call? Right? It's that person. Okay? So again, outside of you as being the center, you're going to have this ring of support, right? These 1 to 3 people who you can be open and honest and vulnerable, and you can be real and you can be raw with those people. And then outside of that, you're going to have another ring of support. You might call this your outer circle. Like, these are the people that you just do life with every day. These might be your friends, your family member, your coworkers, the people that you feel connected to in your life. Now, they might not know all the intimate details about you, but they care about you, and you care about them, and you matter to them, and they matter to you, and they're a critical part of your support system. And then I just want to talk about one more ring outside of that, and it's this circle of support of community. Like, having community support, whether that is, there's lots of ways we can think about community, whether that is like the physical neighborhood you live in. We think about that as like a geographic kind of community. Some of you are connected in like some kind of affinity group community, like maybe you're on a sports team, or maybe your kids are a part of a sports team and you have community with them. For many of us, we have a faith community. Like, we're plugged into a local church. We might be part of a small group. We might serve as a volunteer in that church, right? We have some kind of support there in our faith community. For many of us, we have a work team, or like we might call it a work family, right? We find support with our peers and our colleagues and our coworkers, right? And there's lots more examples. And so it's really important. Again, these people, if we go back to the center, they might not know the intimate you, right? At the very core and the very, very center. They might not be in that inner sense, that inner circle where you can call them at 2 a.m. and they're the people you can be most vulnerable, most honest with. They might not be in the next tier of the people you just do life with in that outer circle. But that extended community support is vital. So when we apply this back to resilience, it's this idea of when we're struggling and we're hurt and we've fallen down and things are not going our way, that we know that we've got people around us who are there to help pick us up, who are there to be able to dust us off, pat us on the back, give us a high five, pray with us, encourage us, and support us that we can keep moving forward. All right, then the last thing I want to talk about building resilience is this idea of accepting change. Ooh, that's a tough one. Part of resilience, the strength of resilience, is the ability to accept change. Maybe you've heard that quote before, that the only thing in life that is absolute is the fact of like change itself. I know I just butchered that quote, but the paraphrase of it is simply this idea that the only thing we can be certain of is uncertainty. The only thing that we can be sure of is that things are not always going to be sure. Right? We recognize that we live in a very fluid world, right? Where things are changing. They're constantly changing. Whether that's in like as we age and like our physical bodies, right? Constantly changing. Whether that is in the relationships we have and the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs. whether that's in the work that we do and the constant changes in our industry or with our employer. Right? There's just constant change happening about us. That's like in the world around us, in politics. There's just so much change happening. And I think for many people, there's just a rigidity. There's a resistance to change. Well, why do we resist change? Because it's uncertain, it's unknown. And what does that typically experience like for us? It's the unknown is anxiety and worry and stress and nervousness. But if we can make a mindset shift from rigidity to kind of fluidity, it's this shift of being able to say, I'm going to be boxed into this is all I know, and this is all I ever know, and this is all I ever want to know or experience in my life, to a shift of being more open to not just change, but as I talked about earlier, like adaptability and flexibility. In fact, I just did a recent talk on the idea of having a mindset of growth. You've heard that before, a growth mindset? Or maybe you've heard the phrase of being a lifelong learner. That's this mindset shift. All right, it's just being able to accept change. Change is going to happen whether I accept it or not. So I'm just going to choose to accept it. And within that, I'm going to be able to choose to say, hey, when change happens, it's an opportunity. Right? It's an opportunity rather than an obstacle. So I'm going to choose to look at change as opportunity. What can I learn? How can I grow? How can I strengthen? How can I improve? And how can I see whatever this change is that's going on in my life right now? That's a part of something bigger. Remember going back to the story I mentioned about this client, right? They lost their job unexpected. Suddenly, it was a major blow to them. And yet, through their flexibility, adaptability, right, through their efforts to stay focused, to find support around them, to do the work with coming to see a therapist like me, right? Incredible resilience. All right, last thing I want to do is I just want to put this into practice. I want to do what's called a guided visualization. Okay, so if you would, just close your eyes. Take a deep breath like we practiced earlier. Breath in. And a breath out. Here's what I want you to do with your eyes still closed. I want you to imagine a challenging situation. Like imagine whether it's a situation you might be in the middle of right now. It might be something you've experienced recently. And imagine that challenging situation. Now I want you to envision yourself handling that situation with calmness, right, where you are present, where you are engaged, where you are responding rather than reacting. I want you to envision that you respond to this situation with resilience. Resilience that you're going to do some self-assessment, right? You're going to practice mindfulness. You're going to reach out to key support people in your lives. You're going to build that support team around you. You're going to choose to accept change. Like you're going to lean into this with a growth mentality. You're going to choose to be adaptive. You're going to leverage flexibility. Okay, visualize what you do. Like, how are you going to stay calm? How are you going to solve whatever obstacles in front of you that you're choosing to see it as an opportunity? Visualize that you've gotten knocked down and that you're with all of the grit inside of you and all of the resolve you've got. you're going to get back up. And you're going to start to put one foot in front of the other. So I want you to stay with this, right? This challenging situation. You're visualizing you're staying calm. You're visualizing how you're solving the problem. You're visualizing how you're getting back up. I want you to visualize moving past the challenge. And I want you to experience the feeling of pride, the feeling of relief when it comes to overcoming the challenge. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes back up. Have you ever done something like that before? A guided visualization? I don't know how this experience was for you, but it's actually a very powerful experience when we can visualize something in the future. Right? Rather than the reactivity of anxiety and worry and nervousness and stress, we're gonna visualize something different in the future, right? Like we just did, right? What's a situation we're in the middle of? What's it gonna look like when we're calm? What's it gonna feel like when we're resilient? How's it gonna work when we get back up? When we put our mind to something new in the future with adaptiveness and with support, with choosing to accept change. Yeah, it's a really powerful experience for us. And if you've never done this before, even if you have done this before, I would encourage you, when you find yourself in those difficult places and those obstacles are in front of us, to visualize resilience, right? What does resilience look like in the middle of it, and how does it feel when we've done the work, right? The feeling of sense of pride and the feeling of the sense of relief as we have overcome and we have moved beyond that challenge. All right, I hope this was helpful for you today. Just a couple things just before we wrap up for today. First is just a quick reminder to every week. Every week we're here Mondays for Mindset Monday. Every Wednesday we're back for Wellness Wednesday, and every Friday we wrap up the week with Faithful Friday. So it's 12:15 Eastern Standard Time every week. Glad to have you guys with us today. Would encourage you that if you're in the app, check out what we've got in the app. If you're on the website, livewell-coaching.com, we are constantly